Time was when an American about to go abroad would be warned by his friends or the guidebooks not to drink the water. But times have changed, and nowadays a foreigner coming to this country might well be offered the following advice. If you visit American City, you will find it very pretty. Just two things of which you must beware. Don't drink the water and don't breathe the air.
The complexity of all pollution problems is exemplified by Lake Erie. It involves 25 polluted rivers and the sewage of 9 million people.
The Cuyahoga River in Ohio is so loaded with the waste products of petroleum distillation that it is actually in danger of catching fire.
Of the 41 industries discharging directly into the Cuyahoga, 19 bear the onus of having been singled out for inadequately treating their wastes.
Steel mills and oil refineries are among the worst polluters of Lake Michigan.
There are rivers in which bacteria have been estimated at 1,500 times human safety level.
Moving east, Lake Erie is almost biologically dead. That is, desirable aquatic life can no longer survive here.
18 of the major environmental proposals which I put forward a year ago have still not received final action by the Congress. I repeat today my urgent request for congressional action on this much-needed legislation.
And the veil, then you can breathe, long as you don't inhale.
Alyssa and Julie, yep.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Attacks on signs have got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho!
It's a pleasure to be here today. My father, Gaylord Nelson, the founder of Birthday, he would be so delighted to see you here. This is the 47th Earth Day. The first Earth Day occurred April 22nd, 1970. 20 million people gathered that first Earth Day. It was the largest secular event in American history. That day changed the course of history. It launched the environmental decade. President Richard Nixon, a Republican, signed into law the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency to create protections for your right to breathe clean air and your right to drink clean water. In his 1970 State of the Union address, President Nixon said this:
"Clean air, clean water, open spaces, these should once again be the birthright of every American."
We are going to end the EPA intrusion into your lives. We will also pursue an agenda of conservation, protecting our beautiful natural resources for future Americans, your family, your children, and lots of other people. And we're going to ensure clean air and clean water for all of our people.
President Donald Trump has turned in his budget proposal to Congress.
No matter who people voted for in last November's election, they did not vote for this.
In a conference call with reporters today, Democratic Congressman Dan Kildee railed against the administration's proposal that would cut the $300 million Great Lakes Restoration Initiative.
It was just 50 years ago that water that flowed into the Great Lakes was so polluted it actually caught on fire. The EPA's Great Lakes Restoration Initiative has been working to combat the pollution, the invasive species, and the nutrient runoff that feeds toxic algal blooms. Now, their work is in jeopardy.
Lake Michigan and other Great Lakes need help, which is why there's such a concerted effort to restore them.
President Donald Trump proposed eliminating the program's funding last year.
The Great Lakes are a resource vital not just to Michigan, as it represents about 90% of America's fresh water, providing drinking water to 48 million people.
Our next story tonight is about two women who are on a mission to help sustain the Great Lakes.
On August 26th, Julia Robson and Alyssa Armbrust
Brewster left their homes in Milwaukee, Wisconsin to hike 332 miles to the Porcupine Mountains with a project they created called Walk to Sustain Our Great Lakes. With stops every day on the 25-day journey, Robson and Armbruster hope to inspire people.
I really got the sense that people weren't genuinely aware of what was going on.
A month is a long time. Sometimes I think about that and I'm like, we're stopping everything we're doing for a month just to walk.
It just amazes me. This is the largest freshwater system on the face of the planet. And how many people every single day rely on it to survive. During the 60s and 70s, when we had the big polluters destroying our freshwater systems. To hear that there was threats to those agencies, those things that we had in place. That's why I wanted to do something that talked about those issues.
I got another bag.
Very nice Saturday.
Oh, I think so. I met a lady.
Well, I grew up here in Milwaukee. I've always been on the Great Lakes, fishing, boating. I guess I've always kind of taken them for granted. But after Julia started this, and with recent events threatening the protection for our Great Lakes, really realized how important they are. It is the largest source of fresh water on the planet, and we need water to exist, so why shouldn't we care about protecting the Great Lakes? Other places have issues with water, and it creates huge amounts of conflict where we take this for granted. We have this huge source of water right here. It shouldn't be an issue of politics or one side or the other. I mean, everyone needs water. Everything needs water. Everyone should care about protecting the Great Lakes and appreciate what we have here and not take it for granted. We don't want it to be a problem before everyone starts caring. We want everyone to appreciate and realize what we have.
Water is the universal wonder of the world. Part of my position is funded through the GLRI, so it's a super important issue for me, essentially, to keep me employed, but to also spur the awareness about why water is so important. You know, people don't realize how important something is until it's gone. So once it's gone, what do we do? So it's important to speak up for it now, because water doesn't have a voice, but we do.
I feel like this is more people than I thought would ever show up for this first one, and it's awesome, and now I want to do one every week. And it's awesome to see so many people caring about the Great Lakes today.
You enjoyed it? Awesome. We had such a good turnout. Look at all those people in just our first one that came out to support this.
And this is just a last minute thing.
It's all starting. Thank you guys for coming. See you later. Bye. Salvage yard. We got a little pool at the place, so we're gonna do a little bit of teamwork. I think throughout conservation history, there's unfortunately, a lot of what we've had to do has been reactive to things. And I think when it comes to our single most important freshwater resources, we can't be reactive, we need to be on the proactive end of things. And that's why, aside from restoration work, research, that's all so important. That's something, though, at the end of the day, people who live in the Great Lakes Basin, Great Lakers, red or blue, Republican or Democrat, independent, we all want what's best for that water.
We all want the same thing.
What freaks me out a little bit is that, you know, with things like with climate change and just human population growth overall, and things that we just don't have a full understanding of at this point, how rapidly they seem to be, the impacts and effects of it seem to be coming up on us. This resource, it's gold. It's just liquid gold. And there is going to be even more and more of a demand for it, especially as people, you know, when people are displaced by climate change, when we're looking at severe droughts and other very already arid regions of just the U.S. alone. Make a big deal about the Waukesha water diversion. There's going to be 100 more just like it in the next 100 years. So we've got to figure out, we've got to invest in figuring out how do we go about doing this, dealing with this sustainably, so that we do not, you know, the lakes don't run their course. We don't mismanage it. Do no harm first kind of policy. Kenosha native, this is awesome to see. I honestly, I didn't spend too much time down here in the harbor when I was growing up, so I'm from Miami originally, so it's awesome to see everything that's here. But when I was reading about how everything's changed over the years here with the restoration of the harbor development, it's awesome to see, because the Great Lakes aren't just an environmental asset for us, they're obviously an economic asset too. Has anybody heard of a zebra or quagga mussel before? Yeah.
Of alewife. We're pulling them in the back of the boat.
And that's you standing there.
Yep, that's when I had hair on my head. That's your trawl. This is pond net. Nobody fishes them anymore. And these are the trap nets that are out there now that they use for whitefish. And these were, they call them fight nets. They use them on Green Bay for perch once in a while. They're like little barrels.
Oh yeah.
Here's my dad.
You in this picture?
Yeah, that's me, my dad, my brother Dan, and my younger brother Paul.
You guys have the record, the state record for pounds of alewives pulled,
Yep.
right?
Yep. That was like 250,000 or so. Here's a picture of the first Suzy Q. That's when they used to have.
Those are fish.
My dad was pretty good at getting for boat parades.
Yeah. Seems like it.
This is where we used to put our alewife. We used to have it this high all the way up to the front, all the way
Full
around.
alewife?
Full.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you, so with the Cladophora, is that a problem that you noticed got worse with the trap nets as more of the zebra mussel problem started?
All the quagga mussels was the biggest problem. Those nets like you seen on there, where we set those, they get filled with them, and the bottom, it tears the twine because it's so fine.
Right.
So it wrecks those nets quite a bit. That's why I'm patching. It's a steady job fixing nets.
Is that what you're doing in there? Patching? Mainly because of zebra, like quagga mussel tears?
Yeah.
How much is the net like that cost? I mean, how much is
Probably
that cost?
around $400 to $500 now.
You could hear them just falling.
And that's not a lot. You get it so it's just piles of them. You just take the nets and shake it out on the floor, because what are you gonna? That's all you can do with it.
Right.
Get most of it out.
A lot of these non-native invasive species in the Great Lakes, we have over 180 of them, were brought in ballast water from big international freight ships that come in from the St. Lawrence Seaway and make their way into the Great Lakes. And they dump their ballast water, which keeps those ships nice and balanced. When they have cargo, they take in seawater or lake water from other parts of the globe, and then they have to dump it when their product is taken off. And they used to just let that flush right into the Great Lakes. And that's a type of biological pollution, basically, because that ballast water is filled with stuff that's not native to here, and that's how we got zebra mussels.
When the mussels came in, that's our biggest problem right now. I think is the mussel problem. That because there's no food, and it starts on the bottom of the food chain, where the mussels eat all the little stuff, and the small fish don't have anything to eat. So these mashes here. This is called a salvage, because you can see there's two strings on there. So we just put one.
It becomes muscle memory for you.
Yeah. Count to 6 all the time.
Yeah.
But then we just sew it across on both sides and go again.
A lot of water utilities that have their water intake pipes, the water that you need to drink, spend millions of dollars per year in unplugging those water intake pipes from zebra mussels and quagga mussels. We spend in the Great Lakes region alone $200 million per year in dealing with damages and management of invasive species.
Because of this land use, we are getting more nutrients into Lake Erie than all the other Great Lakes. Okay? That nutrients is coming from us, people, when we flush our toilets or run our dishwashers or run our washing machines. It's coming from the fertilizers that we apply to our field, and it's coming from the animals that are living on that landscape. So we have a lot of nutrients into the system. And because that lake is so small relative to the other Great Lakes, if you have lots of nutrients and lots of sunlight, you have the potential for these blooms. Now, there are places in some of these other Great Lakes like Saginaw Bay and then Green Bay up in Wisconsin. Those bays within those Great Lakes have huge algal blooms like us.
The main problem facing Lake Erie are the harmful algal blooms. They respond to a lot of excess nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen, from the watershed getting into the lake, and they reach very high biomasses and have the potential to produce harmful toxins. Regards to human health, the main one we're concerned about that's most common is called microcystin. There's about 100 different types of microcystin that vary slightly, but they all target the liver. If you're swimming in it, people can get skin rashes. If you drink the water, it can upset your stomach. In Brazil, hundreds of people have been killed that were on dialysis machines when the water had microcystins in it.
So I think to start, if you could just state your name and then your title.
Yeah, so Chris Winslow, Director for Ohio Sea Grant and Ohio State University Stone Laboratory. Here at the Island facility, we try and do a lot of outreach events, and so this is just one in our long suite or large suite of outreach events. And so really the idea is, outside of formalized classroom learning, is to get stakeholder groups up here and really just kind of show them the science and what we're doing and the state of the lake and what we can do to help protect the lake. So with any of this, you know, there's a bell-shaped curve. There's some people that are probably already doing and have always been doing the practices that keep the nutrients in the field. And then there's going to be this middle of that bell-shaped curve that want to be part of the solution. They just need guidance on what to do and how to efficiently do it. With anything, you're going to have those people that are, you know, probably not going to work hard on it. But I think, in my experience, I have not run into many farmers that are on that, you know, stick their head in the sand and don't want to be part of the solution. I think the farming community is pretty engaged.
Farmers reached out to you?
Oftentimes they will, yeah, and you guys witnessed that today. You know, when I'm done, I pull up my business cards and say, if you think anybody else would benefit from this opportunity, you know, here's my card. And so some of it's long-standing relationships we've had for a decade plus, and some of them are people that hear one program and then they go back and next thing you know, they're a member of a Lions Club or a Kiwanis Club, or and so they contact us and set some of these things up. We have, Nature Conservancy will come out and have some of their annual team building exercises. Coming up in mid-August, we have a Decision Makers Day. So we bring county commissioners, mayors, elected officials out here and basically show them, this is what you should know about your resource in your backyard. These are the things you can do to kind of make a difference. So the way I always talk about this is when you think about an aquatic ecosystem, there are chemical hindrances to that system and there are biological hindrances to that system. So when I talk about chemical, you think about like the PCBs and the dioxins and the mercury and all that kind of stuff. I really think we've moved an improvement needle for Lake Erie in the chemical realm. It's the biological realm that we're struggling with. And 3 examples of that, well, 2 real easy are invasive species. You still got the lasting effects of the quagga and zebra mussels, so the dreissenids. You've got round gobies in the lake. You got Asian carp knocking on the door. And then biologically, you got these blooms, these harmful algal blooms. So on the biological side, I would say we're in a poor condition overall as the lake and likely stable or deteriorating. But on the chemical pollutant side of things, you're seeing vast improvements. A lot of that GLRI money is going to what are called AOCs, or areas of concern. So a lot of that money is mobilized to do dredging and get some of that nasty sediments out of the lake. So there's, I'm just going to say, like 40-some metrics in there. And some of those indicator metrics are getting much, much better on the chemical side of things. But then when you layer all the biological ones on there, the picture looks bad. But you can't go in thinking that we're not making progress. We are. It's just in which sector we're making that progress. think there's always tickets out there. You just gotta how much you want to pay for them sometimes too.
Those
though, but-
Cowboys ones are like
I don't know
that would be fun.
The old way is to go out here and till the soil and till it once or twice here in the spring, plant the crop, and then when we harvest it later on, then they work the ground again. So what we're trying to do is we're trying not to work the ground at all, if at all possible. So we basically, what we have them do is we have them plant, so if they take corn silage off, we ask them that they put a cover crop in following that. We want them chasing the corn chopper or the chopper with the planter and planting the cover crop at the same time. Once the cover crop is established, hopefully we've got material like this. This is all winter rye here in this case. This will stay green here through the winter months and into spring. The hope is someday that we could get this where we don't have to use a herbicide anymore. We actually use this mulch here as our herbicide. But we have issues with certain weeds. So this is black nightshade. So the problem with that weed is it's the same exact size as the soybean. So when it comes time to market your soybeans, they get penalized for that berry because it's the same size as soybean. So if you're paying for soybeans, you want to pay for nightshade, right? And I think producers would be more willing to go to this style of planting if they got more money for the crops that they're growing organically. So we're not quite there yet. We've got a little bit to go here yet. So we're looking to try and feed the soil. The dairymen around here wouldn't not feed their cows, right? It's really no different if we don't feed the soil. The soil can't really correct itself. The biology will consume this all season long. That's a component that we never really talk about, and it's tough to get producers to understand. Just so much easier to go out there and work the ground. So in this system, we're asking them to let the biology do the tillage for them and create the glues in the soil called glomalin, and the glues will hold that soil together. When we work this soil here in this area, we destroy that glomalin. So when we get raindrop impact, and then everything starts moving and off into the streams. So. The Great Lakes Initiative ultimately is where those funding sources come from, and it'd be tough to get producers on board here because of that risk ends of things. We get them to try that, and we try and bring different pieces of equipment in here, and some of that is through that funding. And then we're starting to get some private sources of funding here coming in here as well. So that's really kind of helped us out here to try some of this stuff here. But it's really tough to get a producer to try something when you're telling them to flip the bill. Right. So I want you to try this, but I want you to flip the bill on it. It's a kind of a tough sell. And we've had pretty good luck here. We've had a lot of participation here with producers in the area, which has been great. And I think the producers understand that there's a connection here with some of the runoff that we're seeing versus some of the practices that they've been doing here in the past. And I think they get it, but they've been looking for that answer. How do we get there?
Right.
So. I think this is one of the answers of getting there, but it's like I want you to drive your car 55 miles an hour down the road, but I want you to do it backwards. Okay, so we're kind of asking them to do that same thing.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. But I think all in all, they're believing in it. We've got some things that we've got to figure out with this, and that's part of the reason we're doing demo farms. We're trying things that are out of the box. And I want these guys thinking out of the box here at all times. We currently have 6 farms, and we're looking at a 7th. There's a couple we're looking at a 3rd one here in Outagamie County.
Okay.
So there's 4 in Brown County, and there's 2 in Outagamie County. And we're looking at a 3rd one in Outagamie County as well. And the other side of it too is we're trying some things that we're not used to doing. So this is our first kick at the can on running a ZRX planter out here with this crop. And I know, there's some things that we'll end up working through and changing. It's guaranteed we'll change some things, but I guess this is where we start. We're not off to a bad start here, but I know we could improve. Finding out that around 75% of our phosphorus is coming from the sediment at this particular site. So to say that it's going to be the same all over, you'd be kidding yourself. But at this particular site, we know that 75% is coming from the sedimentation. So.
Does each farm have one of the USGS monitoring?
No, we have it at. Let's see, we have monitoring sites at 3 different farms. We also have one that's a paired watershed where we've got 2 monitoring sites side by side. So one is going to measure the conventional practices, and one's going to measure the no-till and cover crop end of it. So we'll see where that goes here. We're still doing baseline data, and hopefully by the end of this year we can start moving into getting a cover crop established. I think where we want to get to ultimately is we want to get it to the point Grass waterways are important, don't get me wrong, but ultimately, when I'm looking at this thing, I want this whole thing to become a buffer. So ultimately, we need to keep this ground covered up at all times. So it'd be nice to have this here all the time, and we get the infiltration. If we can increase the infiltration a couple inches, then that means it's less water that's got to run off into that waterway and fill it up. What we're trying to do is we just want to keep it in place to begin with. So the crop was planted, and then there was an application of manure applied on this field. It's really a great nutrient source because there's a lot of micronutrients in there too. There's zinc, there's copper, there's manganese, plus it actually feeds the biology, believe it or not. So we still have to get rid of all of that waste. And there's a lot of water in that material. With these dairies, instead of applying it all in the fall, that's been the traditional practice, is to apply it all in the fall. What we're trying to do is in fact, this field has already had it. It's so easy for a producer right now. Their plan is to go work the field, work it twice, plant it, and at the end of the season harvest it, and then work the field again. And that's the plan. And I think they've got that figured out. Now, when we plan, I'm asking you, we got to think about a half a year in advance, maybe even a year in advance. This is the cover crops that we need to be thinking about planting here this fall. We got to decide whether or not we're going to put the manure on before the cover crop or after the cover crop, in some cases, just depending upon Mother Nature. That's going to be the biggest challenge, is the more planting that's got to be done. So how do you, when spring comes around, do we have to terminate that cover crop or don't we? So depending upon what we planted is going to determine whether or not we got to terminate that. It starts at EPA, but ultimately the state has got to make the rule that's going to work in your area. Yeah, so we're at Van de Wettering Farms here, and what we did here is we planted. This is a practice called interseeding. So, in this case here, it's red clover, and we've got a special planter that we use in order to plant here between the rows. As you can see in here, this red clover is established pretty good here, I would consider. And since we've got a lot of sunlight getting down in here, it just kind of keeps flourishing. Eventually, though, this corn will get to be 9-10 feet tall, and it'll canopy this, and you won't hardly see any sunlight reaching the bottom. And that's the problem we've got with interseeding. But we found out, in Penn State University's done a lot of work with this, where they found out that red clover can withstand that period when it doesn't get a lot of sunlight. So ultimately, what's going to happen with this field is once he harvests this and takes this off, we'll have this cover crop here established. And as part of this is all going to be fenced off here. I think from the buildings all the way around here to that tree line, and they'll go to that tree line and all the way around. This whole thing is going to get fenced off, and ultimately he's going to come in here and graze this. So as part of the project here, since he's not going to be working this up here in the fall, it'll probably be more dry cows and young stock, but they'll actually come out here and they'll eat this material, eat the red clover. This coming fall.
The Nicolay State Trail. So we'll come in here. This is Green Bay down here. And then we'll make our way up to Gillett, and that's where we get on the Nicolay State Trail. And that whole forest is pretty much littered with streams and creeks, so we should have plenty of water.
We got a big old Ottawa Park, man. We got some gorp. Good old raisins and peanuts.
With goldfish.
And goldfish. This is like our gorp for 3 or 4 days. So we each have one of these bags that we'll be carrying. And we'll make it last. And there's some Oreos that I snuck in there. And then we have these little like peanut butter pouches and power gels. We also got a really awesome donation from this company called Mike's Mix, and it's based out of Baraboo, Wisconsin, and they make protein powders and gels, so we're going to be making some power balls that we can have with all of our food out of the Mike's Mix that they donated. So that's our gorp.
Oh, I forgot about this. We are going to have instant coffee, of course. So these are Lecky trekking poles, and these are great for, especially when we're going to be on those dirt trails like through Nicolay and in Ottawa. They're nice for helping you keep your footing, but for me, it helps me keep good posture. when I'm walking and I'm not slouching as much, when I have to have my shoulders upright using some of these poles, I want to extend them all the way. Have you used these yet? Yeah. Yeah. So they're nice, and they're really lightweight too. And they've got these nice bottoms on them too. I don't know if you can focus on that, but that'll dig into the dirt really nicely.
It'll be nice the days leading up to the, like before we get resupplies, because we'll be running out of food, so it won't be as heavy, our packs.
Yep.
Yeah, we got pretty basic meals. Maybe our friends will surprise us with treats.
I like my steaks medium rare. And I love asparagus. I like surf and turf too.
I like hot fudge sundaes and pretzels.
Hold the nuts.
Yeah, I already have enough nuts for the whole.
Yeah. Oh man.
I guess here goes nothing.
Could be good.
Yeah. Book it through the donut hole. I think that's only like 13 miles that day, so it'll be a shorter day. And
then we get to the porcupines. Yep. And we'll be coming in right around here.
Yep, Summit Peak Road. And then going up to Mirror Lake, which we found out has a bad bear problem at night for camping. So we weren't planning on camping there that night, which works, but it's good to know in case we need to, that because there's a lot of fishermen that just dump the guts after they clean the fish right around the lake. And the bears
and then
come.
This is Union Bay, where we're going to be finishing and putting our feet in Lake Superior for the first time. This is where you guys are going to be meeting us. That'll be the big finish.
Mm-hmm.
That is if we can somehow work it out to get our backcountry permit.
Yeah.
Because Michigan isn't being very amenable to us just walking into the park.
A month is a long time that we're just gonna be walking. Sometimes I think about that and I'm like, I'm just stopping we're stopping everything we're doing for a month just to walk.
It's gonna be a fun personal challenge.
I know.
Just our bodies are gonna want to stop, and that's gonna be. It's gonna be fun to push through that. I say fun, but I'm probably gonna hate it.
Oh, I know. We're gonna be so mad and angry, but we're just gonna have to keep walking.
Yeah, if there's something, I'm not gonna stop. Even if I bust both my feet, I'm gonna get a wheelchair and I'm gonna wheel to Superior. Because it's still gotta be green.
Yeah.
Do something. I'll get there.
Getting up the hills to Lake of the Clouds. Yeah, we'll also be having a relatively flat walk, which will be nice until we get down to the Porcupine Mountains. So those last 2 days are just gonna be right uphill.
Finish with a good ass whooping.
Yep. As if we didn't get our ass kicked the whole time. And then we'll have a big celebration with our film crew and our family and beer.
Back in the 1960s, this is not what it looked like. This area wasn't always thriving in terms of a big sport fishing spot or where you'd even come to the beaches, really. So the harbor development, prior to its big restoration, for almost 100 years, from about 1870 to the 1960s, this was a brownfield. So brownfields are areas where it's an area that was developed at one point for either industrial or commercial use, and its future development or use is hindered by the fact that there's some sort of environmental contamination there. So that's what it was behind us. For a while, it was the foundation for the Simmons Mattress Company, and then it was also turned over to American Motors, correct? American Motors for 20 years after 1960. And during that time, there was also a power plant and coal piles here, so that land, it's close to 70 acres there, that was all used for heavy industrial purposes. And during that time, the soil had become severely contaminated with lead, solvents, and petroleum. When the city acquired it, the city of Kenosha in 1994, that's when all the major restoration started, because you can't use contaminated soil like that for much of anything. So then they started the process through brownfield funds from the federal government and the state. About $2.5 million worth went in to restoring that area, cleaning out the dredged contaminated soils. I think there was about 6,000 cubic yards, which is about 600 big dump trucks. That's a lot of contaminated soil that was taken off of that site. Then they capped it and they started to restore it and develop it. So now you've got this thriving economic and recreational area behind you that was built on an area that was once really heavily contaminated. And it's done a lot, not just for people who want to come down here and enjoy the lake, even the economy. I mean, the area right on there that's been developed, the property values jumped $50 million, and properties adjacent to that harbor development area jumped by $13 million. So there's been a big boost by environmental cleanups, because if you think about it, you're not going to have condos being built up on dirty water that smells, that you can't swim in and you can't fish in. So there's been an immense amount of progress that's happened right behind us, and it's just kind of opened the door for people in Kenosha to come out and enjoy the lake. Because another thing that's really cool about Kenosha is that 90% of its shoreline to Lake Michigan is publicly accessible. Not all, cities and counties can say that. There's some private lands built up in there. So you can come out here and you can enjoy a clean lake. You can take the electric streetcar, enjoy the harbor market, which is going on today, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of great opportunities, and that's kind of a gold star right behind you, right in Kenosha, that wasn't always there.